Shalom. I'd like to start out by giving all glory, praise, and honor to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham, Rakach Wadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of the Great Millstone. And Shalom to the elect of Israel. This is Thamayim in Atlanta, and I wanted to go into this Cleopatra controversy that is brewing up currently over the casting of this new Netflix show on Cleopatra. And you can see in the right hand corner that's who has been cast as Cleopatra. And both here in America and in Egypt, they are complaining about the casting. Basically, that she is cast as a so-called black woman. But you can even see right there, she's what you would call a light-skinned, quote-unquote black person. Because we know there's no such thing as a black person, just like there's no such thing as a white person. But over in Egypt, they're saying this. It says Egyptians complain over Netflix depiction of Cleopatra as black. It says Netflix docudrama series that depicts Queen Cleopatra VII as a so-called black African has sparked controversy in Egypt. A lawyer has filed a complaint that accuses African queens because Cleopatra was more of a title than just a singular individual. And you can see the Cleopatra VII. So there were actually many Cleopatras. But it says Queen Cleopatra of violating media laws and aiming to erase the Egyptian identity. A top archaeologist insisted Cleopatra was light-skinned, not black. And if you look at the current population that's over in Egypt right now, they're more of a Ishmael, Elam mix. Mostly look kind of Arab looking. But that's a result from when Islam came into power and they went out the region conquering and migrating into these other regions. Forget exactly what that was called, but that was after the death of Yahweh Shai. That wasn't in ancient times and back then when Cleopatra was around. So they don't even have a claim on this because they didn't come in until much later after that. But then you look on the left hand of this post right here, where it's speaking of Wonder Woman, Gal Gadot. And it says, Gal Gadot defends Cleopatra casting after whitewashing controversy. And it goes on down to say, Israeli film star Gal Gadot has defended her plan to play Cleopatra following accusations of whitewashing. Critics say an Arab or African actress should play the ancient Egyptian queen. And then Gal Gadot's response was, first of all, if you want to be true to the facts, then Cleopatra was Macedonian. The Wonder Woman actress told BBC Arabic's Sam Assi. And she's completely right. She was of that stock. That was her lineage. She comes through the Ptolemaic line, and as we know, scripturally, according to Numbers 1 and 18, the lineage passes through the father. And so I don't think people understand the can of worms that they're opening when they're making these complaints about this stuff, because she's from over there in the land. She's an Israeli actress, but they claim that your lineage comes through your mother, but in fact it comes through your father, and that's how she's even saying it right here, that she was Macedonian, because the Ptolemies took over Egypt after the conquerings of Alexander the Greek, and the Ptolemies were put over that region, over Egypt, and ruled through Egypt. And she's actually right, because Cleopatra was a daughter of Ptolemy, and the lineage goes through the father. So she's 100% right, but this also exposes the lie of matrilineal descent. It's through the father. The woman is described as the land, and the father has the seed. So it's their seed line that goes forth. But we'll go ahead and take a look at that, because that's one second. That's what the scriptures say. And so just did a quick search of Cleopatra in this Bible app, and she comes up 3 times. First time in editions of Esther 11:1, and then she also comes up in First Maccabees, the 10th chapter. So we'll take a look at that. First Maccabees 10, and we'll start at 56. And it says, "And now I will do to thee as thou hast written. Meet me therefore at Ptolemais, that we may see one another, for I will marry my daughter to thee according to thy desire." So Ptolemy went out of Egypt with his daughter Cleopatra. And as I was saying, Ptolemy ran Egypt. He was there after Alexander the Greek did his conquering of the known world at that time, and he ruled over one of the 4 regions at that time that Alexander had conquered. And Cleopatra is his daughter. And it says, "And they came unto Ptolemais in the 162nd year. Where King Alexander meeting him, he gave unto him his daughter Cleopatra, and celebrated her marriage at Ptolemais with great glory, as the manner of kings is." And so she is the daughter of Ptolemy, and Gal Gadot was also claiming that she is a Macedonian, which, yeah, that's the region they came out of. But before that, they came from Mount Seir. They came from the land of Edom, because they're actually Edomites. And when they went forth into the land, to different lands, they would just call themselves by the different lands. So they called themselves Macedonians. When they finally conquered Greece through Alexander, they called themselves Greeks. And then with the Romans, the same thing. And then even today, these self-proclaimed white people that are actually go back to the lineage or seed line of Esau, they call themselves the same thing. Like here in America, they call themselves Americans, or in Europe, which they're not the original Europeans. Those were Japhetic people originally, and we'll try to go and look into that. But they call themselves Europeans, or Australia, they're Australians, South Africa, so on and so forth. But in fact, they are the nation of Edom. And it says, "And celebrated her marriage at Ptolemais with great glory, as the manner of kings is." And so let's go and check out Macedonians, because who else was a Macedonian? And that was one of the biggest enemies to the Israelites, being Haman. Haman was also a Macedonian. And he is an enemy, and he's also an Edomite. It says, "For Ammon, a Macedonian, the son of Amadathah, being indeed a stranger from the Persian blood." See, so he wasn't actually a true Persian. He was just moved up through the ranks in their courts, because he had a plot to actually take over that place, as they do everywhere, because you can never trust your enemy. And the Edomites are the enemies of all the nations, but especially the Israelites. And it says, "A far distant and far distant from our goodness, that being the Israelites' goodness, and as a stranger received of us, had so far forth obtained the favor that we show toward every nation, as that he was called our Father and was continually honored of all the next person unto the king. But yeah, Haman, which he calls him Ammon here, was a Macedonian. And that is who Gal Gadot is claiming, or she's claiming that Cleopatra was a Macedonian. So yeah, she is. But these Macedonians go back to Edom, and I don't know if they really want to really speak about that because it exposes them as being the wicked. And so we're going to get into First Maccabees 1:1. And it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Chittim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes. And Medes goes back to Madai, who was the son of Japheth. And so he smote the people of who were there in Greece, and he reigned. And it says that he reigned in his stead going into stock or lineage or his race, the first over Greece. So he was the first white man, or right now they say white man, but really an Edomite. And he even comes through the Amalekite bloodline, which they're the ones who are in our land currently. And that's who Gal Gadot comes from. If she is, I'm not going to say she is or isn't, but that's that lineage. That's the Macedonian lineage. The first over Greece, and made many wars and won many strongholds and slew the kings of the earth, because he conquered. He did a lot of conquering and shed a lot of blood. And it says, and went through to the ends of the earth and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him, whereupon he was exalted and his heart was lifted up. And he gathered a mighty strong host, and ruled over countries and nations and kings, who became tributaries unto him. And after these things he fell sick, and perceived that he should die. And it's at this point that he gives over all of his conquerings over to his 4 generals, Lysimachus, Ptolemy, Seleucid, and Cassander. And that's how you've got Ptolemy ruling over the Egyptians. But the Egyptians aren't of that same lineage. They're not of Macedonian stock. They are of Hamitic stock. They come through the line of Ham. And so we're here in Genesis 10:6. And it says, and the sons of Ham. Ham was the son of Noah, or one of the sons of Noah. It says, and the sons of Ham, Cush and Mizraim and Phut and Canaan. And Mizraim is actually where you get Egypt from. That's actually what it used to be called in the ancient days. And you see it right here, H4714. Mizraim, which hopefully I'm pronouncing that correct, but it says Egypt equals land of the Copts, a country at the northeast section of Africa adjacent to Palestine and through which the Nile flows. And Egyptians means double straits. But that is what Egypt used to be called. And so he's a son of Ham. So let's take a look at that, which it's H2526, which means hot. And it says the second son of Noah, father of Canaan and of various peoples that were inhabitants of the southern lands. And so I also want to get another, just from the Zondervan Compact Dictionary, because this gets brought out often. It says Ham or Hum, which is his name is where you get the name Kemet from, which is what Africa was called before the Romans came in and renamed it after they put down Hannibal in the Punic Wars. But anyway, after they defeated Hannibal, the general who did that, who was Scipio Africanus, they renamed the land of Kemet after him to Africa. And so that's where you get that from. But it says Ham, the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood, before the deluge, the first death, and one of 8 persons to live through the flood. He became the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes. And the Negroes go back to the southern kingdom, which goes back to Israel or Jacob. And so it's the Israelites, which I'll just say it, the Native Americans, the so-called Negroes, and the Latinos, which make up the Israelites. It says he became the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes, but the Egyptians, as we just saw, that's Mizraim, the Ethiopians, the Libyans, and the Canaanites. And the Canaanites were giant enemies to the Israelites. But yeah, so these were originally dark races here, and especially during the time of Exodus, and when they had the Israelites enslaved, that was a dark-skinned race. And the Ptolemies came in and mixed with the women, and that's how you got women like Cleopatra. So, in fact, she was what the world would call a mixed woman. Probably looked something similar to like Tia and Tamara, or something like that, or throughout these lineages. But I think it's just funny that they are all complaining, especially the small hats and the Edomites which they're both Edomites, the self-proclaimed white man and the small hatters. They're both Edomites, different tribes, but nonetheless they go back to the lineage of Esau. But like I also want to say, like I was saying, here we'll get it at Numbers 1 and 18. That lineage is through your father. And so some people that the world will call white, they're actually come from another nation, but through their father's seed, they go back to whichever nation. Like there's some that are the world will call white, but they actually go back to Israelites. There's some that go back to Elam, or some that go back to Ishmael. And so it's through the father's seed. So this is Numbers 1 and 18. And they assembled all the congregation together on the first day of the second month, and they declared their pedigrees, that's your lineage, after their families, by the house of their fathers, according to the number of the names, from 20 years upward, by their polls. So I was just trying to say that because Israel was scattered throughout the 4 corners of the earth, and just because you do have so-called white skin does not mean that you actually go back to Edom or Esau. But that's just throwing that out there too, just to show that, because if you are and you can hear this message that the Israelites have, particularly of the great millstone that came through the elders and apostles, then you could possibly and most likely are of the Israelite stock, because the destruction that is coming to the Edomites is going to be spoken of for a long time. They are the people of the Lord's curse to judgment, and this is their downfall and their exposure right now. But as we were speaking of earlier, they go around the earth and they write themselves in. They change pictures. They change names of different countries. They migrate people into different lands that they're not originally from. And most of all, they do what's called whitewashing or iconoclasm, where they change the images of a certain country or nation wherever they've conquered and make them look like them. And so I did a lesson not too long ago on Zeus Aethiops, which Aethiops goes back to Ethiopia, and kind of it designates dark skin. And Zeus was originally, in the ancient days, dark skinned, but when the Edomites moved into Greece, they changed all of their gods to look like, and these are false gods, and I'm not in any way trying to stick up for these false gods, but they changed them to appear like Edomites with so-called white skin. But it's just not true. And they did that with the Vikings, especially through their media showing them as so-called white people, but they weren't. And with the knights throughout the Dark Ages, they did that. And then most of all, they did it with the Bible and showed the Father, the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, as being a self-proclaimed white person, or a so-called white person. They do it with Yahweh Shai, the man who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. They did it with him. He was not a so-called white person. He was a dark-skinned man, as described throughout the scriptures. Did it with the Israelites and installed themselves as the so-called the Jays, the small hatters, and they did it there. But this is Job 9:24. It says, "The earth is given into the hand of the wicked." And who is the wicked? The wicked would be the Edomites, and that you can go to Malachi, the first chapter, and read verses 1-4, and it tells you that Esau is the border of wickedness, the people. It's not just talking about Esau, it's the whole nation. They are considered the wicked. And so when you see the wicked throughout the scriptures, it's speaking of them. It's also speaking to the wicked of the other nations, but primarily it is focusing on the Edomites. And so it says the earth is given into the hands of the wicked. And if you look around and you're honest, over the last 500 years, that is who has controlled the earth, the self-proclaimed white man. And that's who has the most influence and the most power, the most wealth. And that's really why the earth is in such terrible shape that it's in right now, because they're greedy beyond measure. Just like death itself, just like the grave. It says he covereth the faces of the judges thereof. And I was saying it earlier. They covered the Heavenly Father. They covered over the faces of Yahweh Shai, the man the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. They did the angels, they did the Israelites, and various other judges. It says, if not, where and who is he? So the finger is pointing at the self-proclaimed white man for doing this, or people. But in this case of Cleopatra, it's what I saw in another article. They said it's blackwashing. They said it's doing the reverse, but it's really just people don't have an understanding of these things because everyone's in gross darkness, and the Edomites have pushed out mass confusion to the people, all because they don't want to accept their true heritage of being the sons and daughters of Esau, Edom, the people who the Lord is going to have indignation forever, the people of his curse to judgment, because they wouldn't be able to have a rulership if everybody knew that, but we're at the time of them being exposed, and we're seeing it right now. So, Lord willing, that was edifying. I'd like to give all glory, praise, and honor to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham, Rakach Wadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of the Great Millstone, and Shalom to the elect of Israel. Shalom.